The Kelsey Berreth story. Kelsey Berreth is a beautiful 29-year-old flight instructor who is looking for love, where she meets a cattle rancher online. The two hit it off. Kelsey packed up and moved from her home state in Idaho to Woodland Park, Colorado to be closer to the man she loved, where she purchased the townhome just a few miles away from the place he lived at. Patrick Frazee, the 32-year-old cowboy, cattle rancher, blacksmith, lived on a 35-acre ranch with his mother Sheila. Patrick was the youngest of her children and stuck around to help her out with the large property and the numerous animals that they had on the ranch. He was also a dog breeder and a blacksmith, and would actually be an activist to the wild donkeys in the area, changing out their horseshoes and things like that. He was also involved with the local rodeo. Kelsey lived there for 2 years. In that time frame, Kelsey became pregnant and had a beautiful baby daughter named Kaylee with her fiance, or now fiance, Patrick Frazee. Even though the two were very much in love, they actually lived separate lives. And often they were switching out the daughter back and forth, pretty much 50-50 custody. Patrick Frazee said that they lived such separate lives that for a long time exchanging Kaylee was just in passing. And everything seemed to be perfect until December 2nd. December 2nd, Krystal Berreth, Kelsey Berreth's mother, called the Woodland Police Department because she had not heard from her daughter since Thanksgiving Day, which was over a week. She had sent text messages, she had called her, and there had been no response whatsoever. So Krystal requested a welfare check on her daughter. The Woodland Police Department agreed. They went out to her townhome to find that nobody would come to the door. There was no sound, no activity whatsoever. So Kelsey's mother tries to contact Patrick Frazee, trying to find answers, trying to find out where her daughter might be. Resources say that Krystal called Patrick Frazee, spoke to him briefly, and Frazee tells her that Kelsey mentioned visiting her grandmother in Washington, and that the last time that he heard from her was around November 25th. At that point, the Berreth family is trying to get the word out. They're searching, frantically for their daughter, sister. So they're actually packing their things and heading down to Colorado and stay at Berreth's townhouse for a bit. Kelsey's face is now plastered on the news and social media as a missing person. Police start searching for any tip and follow her tracks, and they end up following those leads to a Safeway grocery store just right down the road from her. They confiscate some surveillance footage and scan through it and find that Kelsey Berreth, was entering the store with her daughter Kaylee, and noticed that she had left the store around 12:27 p.m. that day. But Kelsey wasn't the only one that they were following at the time. They were also tracking Patrick Frazee's footsteps. Turns out they were able to confiscate some surveillance footage of him shopping at a nearby Walmart that same day, about in between 12:54 p.m. and 1:17 p.m. with their daughter, November 22nd. One idea is he was at Walmart buying scented candles at that time, but it's not positive. Now, early December, while Berreth's family was staying in her townhome, they noticed that, Kelsey hasn't packed to go on a trip or anything. Her makeup's there, everything's there. However, they do notice some things that are out of place and that are odd. Berreth's family believed that they found a clue in the bathroom. In fact, that clue was on the base of the toilet. This unknown substance at the time looked like it could be a blood spatter. Investigators come out and they find out that there are spatters on the bathtub, the towel rack, the door handle, ceiling, and other areas in the bathroom. Then Cheryl, Berreth's mom, notices that carpets that were in the bathroom don't seem to be there any longer, that they're missing. The CBI takes samples and then run them, only to concur that yes, it was Berreth's blood. Even so, the police and Berreth's family still continue to treat this as a missing persons case. Soon after, Cheryl is doing news interviews and appears calm and collected throughout the whole interview. But what we know now about what she knows then, she was probably a wreck inside. She knew she had to keep it together for the best interest of the case and for her daughter. Meanwhile, Patrick Frazee is being paparazzied by the media and the public. And police are busy behind the scenes putting the puzzle together. This story starts to make national headlines. And police are busy pulling search warrants for cell phones, for property, and things like this. And indeed, the history sales site information would show that Patrick Frazee and Kelsey Berreth indeed had contact the 22nd through the 25th. And then Special Agent Kevin from the FBI conducted historical call detailed record analysis, only to find out that Patrick wasn't telling the truth. Police were able to follow the connections of both phones of Frazee and Berreth and connect them to towers of in the Cripple Creek area later that evening, November 22nd, traveling the same direction and often similar distances from the cell towers, which indicated that the phones were traveling together. November 24th, both Berreth and Frazee's phone utilized the Verizon cell tower at his residence first thing that morning. Then both phones traveled west toward Cripple Creek. Patrick Frazee really doesn't realize how police could track cell phones. He's not too familiar with technology. In fact, for a while, he really and truly believes he has the upper hand. He skips out on a press conference and he really gets, down for that. He says he didn't show up because he was not aware until an hour before it started. Media tries to come out to his house to interview him or follow him to an attorney's office, and he is very short and rude. Police say that he is cooperative, but evidence says otherwise. During one thing I forgot to mention was Kelsey Berreth's mother pleaded for people to come forward. And it was shortly after that they offered a reward. And a couple that worked at an attorney's office stepped forward. And we found out a lot more information through them, and we found out that there was another person involved, and she was a nurse that was supposedly a mistress of Patrick Frazie's. And in an interview, they claimed that an employee that worked for them was best friends with Krystal Lee Kinney, and said that Krystal had come to her claiming that a friend of hers asked her to kill his girlfriend, which would be Kelsey Berreth. About the same time, we're getting a map that shows that Kelsey Berreth's phone traveled from Woodland Park, Colorado, all the way to Gooding, Idaho, where the phone sent messages to Kelsey Berreth's boss and to Patrick Frazee saying, well, she would not, she was going away for a while. But these text messages, and this point where we realize, Kelsey Berreth's phone is involved in another state, will be a crucial key to whether another suspect was involved in this for another reason. And November 25th of 2018, I think it's around 5 o'clock approximately, maybe 6 o'clock, that her phone shuts off for good. Now the police head to the area and they get negative results. They have no idea that, what is going on with the cell phone once they figure out where it's at. It takes them a while to figure out that Krystal Lee Kinney had that phone and had sent those text messages. The problem with this story is it's hard to tell its story because it's so fragmented right now. I think I'm going to go this direction and cut off the details until later on. Patrick Frazee was finally arrested December 21st, and he remained in jail up until, and still in jail, the preliminary hearing, which changed a few times and finally brought forth details and stuff February 19th. But before people had that information from February 19th, Krystal Lee Kinney had actually started to talk to police. We didn't find out about it until way later, and she was playing a victim. She later went to court and claimed that she was in fear for her life and that she did this because she was afraid that Patrick Frazee was so evil that he might hurt her. But doing the research on the current information we have at the moment, that could be further from the truth. But it seems like they're going to allow her to get away with it since she's testifying against Patrick Frazee. The sad part about this situation is Krystal Lee has known about this since September. And so has several other people, and no one came forward. Krystal Lee is a 32-year-old nurse. She is also involved with the rodeo and has known Patrick's family for years. Supposedly, she had dated him on and off throughout the years, but she did get married to a man named Chad. They had 2 children together, ended up divorced 2016, and have lived together ever since. According to some of the stuff that I read, that she's a very deceiving person, very sneaky and is hiding things from Chad on a regular basis. It seems that her and her friends also have like a code that they have through messages that they understand that if Krystal Lee was to send something to her, she knows that is something she needs to tell Krystal Lee's ex-husband if he were to call. Krystal Lee stood in court with fake tears, surrounded by her attorneys, as she poured out her heart of her idea of why she participated in tampering with evidence. But we would find out that that wasn't it later on. Now, because the story is so long, I'm going to have to do parts, and I'm going to end it here with part 1. So the second part is going to actually cover a lot of the stuff you haven't heard about, or maybe you missed when you did read about it when they shared the updated information on February 19th. It's basically going to go, we're going to look through Kelsey Berreth's eyes, what she's seen, what Krystal Lee seen, and what Patrick seen, and possibly even Kaylee, as this all went down. Now I am absolutely probably struggling a little bit trying to figure out what order to run this, because the affidavit is pretty big and it's got a lot of information on there, and it's got a little bit confusing if you haven't read it yet. But part 2 is probably going to be a lot more interesting. This kind of covered how we led up to, the next video that's coming up. I want to say thanks for watching, and hopefully we can get part 2 rolling a little bit smoother. Thanks for watching, guys. Part 2 coming up.
Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching.